$29 billion. 74 days. 3,468 dead in Iran. 2,702 dead in Lebanon. These are the numbers the Pentagon released yesterday on the true cost of America's war with Iran. But the same day, President Donald Trump told reporters something that has stunned the nation. Quote, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation." End quote. As Trump prepares to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing tomorrow, the war he inherited from a February surprise attack continues to drain American resources at an unprecedented rate. Harvard economist Linda Bilmes now projects the final bill could exceed $1 trillion. This is the story of how a 4 to 6 week military operation became one of the most expensive wars in modern American history. And it's only day 74. To understand the current crisis, we must go back to February 28, 2026. On that day, the United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes against Iran. The targets included Iranian leadership and nuclear infrastructure. Within hours, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed. Iran's response was swift and devastating. Iranian forces immediately retaliated with strikes against Israel and American bases across the region. But the most consequential action came when Tehran moved to effectively close the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important oil choke point. 20% of global oil supplies suddenly stopped flowing. Oil prices surged past $100 per barrel. The International Energy Agency declared an emergency and released strategic petroleum reserves for the first time in years. The Trump administration initially predicted a 4 to 6 week conflict. That prediction has proven dramatically wrong. 74 days later, the war continues with no end in sight. Yesterday, the Pentagon revealed the financial cost has reached $29 billion. That figure represents an increase from the $25 billion reported to Congress just 2 weeks ago. The cost is rising at an average of $200 million per day. But these official numbers tell only part of the story. The $29 billion figure includes only short-term direct military costs. Munitions used, including missiles, bombs, and interceptors. Maintenance of 2 to 3 aircraft carrier strike groups deployed to the region. Personnel costs including combat pay for tens of thousands of service members. And lost or destroyed assets including fighter jets and drones. But Harvard's Linda Bilmes, a leading expert on the cost of America's foreign wars, paints a far more alarming picture. In her recent analysis, she projects the total cost to American taxpayers could exceed $1 trillion when all factors are accounted for. Bilmes writes, quote, "Wars always cost more than expected. Throughout history, those who get into wars tend to be optimistic about the cost and about the length of time it will take." End quote. She points to historical precedent. President George W. Bush fired his economic advisor Larry Lindsey in 2002 for predicting the Iraq War might cost $200 billion. The final cost of the Iraq War exceeded $5 trillion. Russia thought it could take control of Ukraine in a few weeks. That war is now in its 4th year. The medium and long-term costs of the Iran war include veterans' healthcare, equipment replacement, debt servicing, economic disruption, and what economists call opportunity costs, the things government could have funded with that money. For comparison, $29 billion could fund the entire Department of Education for over 6 months. It could pay for the rebuilding of America's aging infrastructure. It could provide healthcare to millions of uninsured Americans. Yet when reporters asked President Trump about the financial burden on American families, his response shocked the nation. "I don't think about Americans' financial situation," he said. The comment has dominated political discourse for the past 24 hours. The human cost is even more staggering. Iranian authorities report 3,468 deaths. In Lebanon, where Hezbollah continues to trade fire with Israeli forces despite a fragile ceasefire, 2,702 have been killed. 28 have died in Gulf states caught in the crossfire. In Iran itself, the population faces a humanitarian catastrophe beyond the immediate violence. Inflation has soared as the American naval blockade strangles the economy. Food prices have skyrocketed beyond the reach of ordinary Iranians. The currency has collapsed. According to analysts, Iran is undergoing what some are calling a North Koreanization, a process of becoming an isolated pariah state. The regional implications extend far beyond Iran and Lebanon. Saudi Arabia, according to Reuters reporting, launched covert strikes against Iran in late March, the first known direct Saudi military action against Iranian territory. Kuwait has accused Iran of launching a failed attack on a port being built with Chinese assistance. The United Arab Emirates has been targeted by Iranian missiles, prompting Israel to deploy its Iron Dome air defense system to the UAE, a remarkable shift in regional alignments. The economic ripple effects are global. With oil prices elevated and shipping through Hormuz disrupted, inflation has accelerated worldwide. A new inflation report is expected to show the war's impact on the American economy. European nations, dependent on alternative oil supplies, have been forced to reconsider their energy strategies. China, which imports massive amounts of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, finds itself in an awkward position as Iran's largest trade partner and the top buyer of its oil. This brings us to tomorrow's high-stakes summit. President Trump arrived in Beijing yesterday for what was originally planned as a trade-focused meeting with President Xi. But the ongoing Iran war and Trump's failed peace efforts will now overshadow those discussions. Analysts say China gains positional advantage from the prolonged conflict. Beijing has been quietly waiting as American resources and political capital drain into the Middle East. So what comes next? Three scenarios are emerging. The first scenario is a negotiated settlement. Pressure from China and Russia, combined with mounting domestic American opposition, forces a face-saving deal. Iran agrees to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. accepts reduced strategic objectives. The war ends but the underlying tensions remain. This is the optimistic outcome. The second scenario is escalation. A major incident, perhaps an attack on American forces or a Saudi-Iranian confrontation, triggers a wider regional war. Costs spiral to multiple trillions. American casualties mount. The presidency faces a political crisis. The third scenario is a prolonged stalemate. The conflict drags on for months or years, like Russia's war in Ukraine. The financial bleeding continues. Domestic American support erodes. The war becomes a political weapon in the 2028 election cycle. What is certain is this. The Iran war has already cost $29 billion in direct military expenses. The final price tag will be measured not just in money but in lives, in regional stability, and in American global standing. The 4 to 6 week war is now 74 days old. And the longer it lasts, the more it threatens to reshape not just the Middle East, but the global order itself. When President Trump says he doesn't think about Americans' financial situation, he speaks for a presidency that has staked enormous resources on a single conflict. Whether that bet pays off or becomes one of the greatest strategic blunders in American history depends on what happens in the coming weeks. The numbers will keep rising. The clock keeps ticking. And somewhere in Beijing tonight, President Xi waits to see how this all plays out. This has been Bordervox. If this analysis helped you understand the true cost of America's Iran war, subscribe for weekly geopolitical breakdowns. Next, we explore how China is positioning itself as the world watches Washington struggle. Stay informed. Stay critical.